This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo, giving you the inside track on all the big talking points from Anfield.
A very good afternoon and welcome to the Blood Red podcast, coming to you from the Liverpool Echo offices. Liverpool followed up a much-needed win against West Ham United last week with a frustrating and slightly depressing draw against Sunderland midweek at Anfield. This weekend they'll face Leeds United in a game where both managers are under pressure to get a result. So we're going to chew the fat on that now with my solitary guest today in a very intimate setting. I'm joined by Liverpool Echo LFC correspondent Paul Gorst. How are you today?
Good, Rich. Yes, I'm good. We are now on the countdown to Christmas, aren't we?
We are indeed, mate.
In that mode where Liverpool are playing 3 games a week and it's difficult to get your bearings and keep up. But we shall plough on, and loads to get into, actually. You know, we thought it was an interesting press conference from Arne Slot today, which we will mull over, I'm sure, looking ahead to tomorrow and the week that was. So, let's get stuck in.
We'll get stuck in. You know, before we get into the slightly depressing subject of football, obviously we are in December. Christmas is fast approaching, as you said. Have you made a list for Father Christmas yet, Paul?
Not yet. No. I'm still trying to pretend that Christmas isn't hurtling down the path. Really, I've got my daughter sorted for Christmas, but everyone else at the moment has got nothing but probably a lump of coal and a tangerine out the fridge. So I need to start making some plans, to be honest. What about you?
But I'm getting there, mate. I've crunched the numbers on the spreadsheet, and I'm pleased to tell the Garnett family Christmas can go ahead. We've made the necessary revisions. I've put young Matthew's order in with Father Christmas. Obviously, whenever you contact Father Christmas, you should do it over a secure internet connection. Make sure no one, nicks the presents that you want. So if you're thinking about doing that, we would recommend you use NordVPN, who are coincidentally the sponsor of the Blood Red podcast. And to get the best discounts off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/bloodred. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and the link is in the podcast episode description box below.
I'd have to clarify that wasn't rehearsed. Our little bit about Christmas Day, was it? That was just
totally ad-libbed.
Just you, taking the show in different directions, which is why you are the host with the most.
Like Smith and Jones for our older viewers. Everyone else will just have to Google
I'm not sure
it.
Who that is.
Even Gorst. Mel Smith and Griffiths Jones.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
You're not that young, Gorst.
Yeah, no, I'm not. No.
Okay.
Sadly.
Anyway, before we get carried away and join ourselves, let's get back to Liverpool Football Club, who, as I said, followed up what was a much-needed win against West Ham with a draw against Sunderland. We've kind of touched on these games coming up. West Ham, Sunderland as Leeds has been absolutely vital for taking the pressure off an under-fire Arne Slot. He won his first one, but his second one was a little bit reverting back to type. So first off, what did you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we spoke a few times, didn't we, that, on the other side of the international break, Liverpool had a selection of fixtures which looked quite favourable, and it was time to put together a little bit of a consistent run and trying to merge past what had been a pretty difficult 2-month period, and then start on the worst of all notes, doesn't it, against Nottingham Forest. And then the West Ham game was more encouraging. But I thought Wednesday night was results aside, I thought the performance was really troubling, disappointing. Liverpool looked like a team who were hosting a newly promoted Sunderland side, and they were playing not to get beat, first and foremost. And I get the idea of making yourself more difficult to beat, tightening up, being more switched on in the early going, don't concede the first goal, at least, very early on. And all that was there. But to go with it, you need some sort of attacking intent, particularly at Anfield. And Liverpool struggled to create anything. And you could really tell that so many of the players' confidence is still rock bottom, really, despite Sunday's encouraging victory. So, I didn't really think Liverpool created enough to come away from the game with a victory. And a draw was about a fair result, to be fair. You look at Sunderland and they drew with Arsenal, they'd beaten Chelsea, so they're having an absolutely outstanding season. But you'd normally expect Liverpool to just move past that one without too much difficulty. And the fact that they didn't is real cause for concern now, because you look at this Anfield fortress and no one is scared of going in anymore, are they? Maybe it's the only players who were scared to play there are the home players. You know, they got beat by Manchester United, they got beat by Forest, they got beat by PSV, and obviously they drew on Wednesday, and they've already lost more points at home than they did across the entirety of last season, which tells you a lot. So, yeah, you know, a positive is they obviously didn't lose, but still a team who were really lacking in confidence and lacking in ideas, particularly in the final third. And I'm just not sure what the plan is, because Liverpool, they've got no intensity. They don't fly out the traps. And okay, it worked last season with a bit more of a controlled approach, but they're still trying to do that and it's not working. And the longer they keep doing it, the more you question why.
Well, yeah, I think if you look at the West Ham game, I predicted Liverpool to lose there. They didn't. West Ham were dreadful, which probably helped quite a lot, really. But you kind of look at that result and sort of approach with caution, because the opposition wasn't very good. If we look at Sunderland, let's just take you through the sort of results they've had. They've beaten Bournemouth, Chelsea, Wolves, Forest, Brentford, West Ham, and drew with Palace, Villa, Everton, Arsenal, and now Liverpool. So they're obviously a decent side. They're definitely a surprise package of the year. They're far out exceeding everyone's expectations, which shows you what a good job the manager's done. But there seems to be a lot of teams that have come up against Liverpool. They've got a plan, and Liverpool can't figure it out. Yeah,
no, it's true. And the worrying thing for me is just what are they trying to do in this final third? They've obviously restructured the attack significantly. Alexander Isak plays, you know, I didn't think he did a whole lot at West Ham, but he takes that goal superbly. And it was just a little bit of a snapshot of get this fella in front of goal and he will find the back of the net. I thought it was a brilliant finish at West Ham, but then against Sunderland, he barely has a kick. I think it was 15 touches in total, which was a similar amount against Forest. I think that might have been 14. So, you know, he's not getting involved, is he? And how much of that is down to the player himself not being 100%, still adapting to his new teammates, still trying to find his way amid the expectations of the fans and the wider demands or expectations of the fact that he's coming for an incredible amount of money, and how much of it is down to Slot's system, which isn't really honed to get the most out of him as the number 9. You know, whoever is the number 9 for Liverpool under Arne Slot, they've always been largely uninvolved. You know, Luis Diaz was probably the most active of the players who's played through the middle in that front three, and that's mainly because of his, you know, general work ethic more than anything. You know, he went through a lean spell at times last season. Diogo Jota, of course, played there. Darwin Núñez, you know, Ekitike's had to go there. And the recurring theme is that more often than not, they're always largely sort of just waiting to get involved and aren't. So I think it is a tactical flaw more than anything. You know, when you've got wingers like Gakpo and Salah who tend to cut in, you know, on their favoured right and left foot, and they are charged with scoring as many goals as the number 9, that is when you start to see service limited to the likes of Isak and Ekitike. And, you know, like I say, when you're not 100% fit, like Isak isn't, and you've had the groin injury that he was out for a month with, and the no pre-season, I think this is a bit of a snowball effect to what you're seeing at the moment, where he's largely just, you know, a bit of a bystander, and that's got to change, because Liverpool have bet the house on him, really, haven't they? So they've got to start getting the most out of him. And I get this idea that he's come in for 6 years rather than 6 weeks or even 6 months, but, you know, you need to start to see something now, because, you know, if Liverpool carry on in this dreadful sequence, top four is going to get away from them, and they can't really afford to not be in the Champions League, can they?
Well, he's going to outlive the manager if results don't improve. That I think is pretty clear. I think you make an interesting point about the number 9s in general being a little bit neglected. I didn't expect to be talking about Darwin Núñez in this pod, but one of my observations from last season was that I felt that Núñez was being a little bit ignored by his teammates, and I put that down really to perhaps a lack of trust in him.
Yeah.
Whereas the point you're making there is making me reconsider that a bit now, in terms of, is it just the system? It simply does not suit a number 9. I mean, I'd love to. How would Erling Haaland cope in this situation?
Yeah, I mean, whenever Man City don't win, it's always a debate, isn't it, about Haaland's output? And some games he's having single-figure touches, you know, 9, 10 touches, 8, 9, 10. But then there's the caveat of, you know, when it goes right, he will score a hat-trick and come away as, the match winner, as he has been so often for Man City. And, Isak outscored Haaland last season, didn't he, with 23 goals. And clearly that Newcastle game plan was structured to get the best out of him. Thinking particularly Jacob Murphy gets 12 assists for Newcastle. How many of them were for Isak? Probably at least 75%, I'd suggest. So
yeah.
Liverpool need to figure out a way to get Isak involved. They need to figure out a way of getting him, in between the posts, inside the penalty area. He's only had 3 shots. I was looking all this up before we come on, and he's only had 3 shots inside the 18-yard box as a Liverpool player.
Well, some of them, going in the top tier as well.
Yeah. I mean, there was the one in the first half, and I'm not sure whether that was outside the area. It might just have been, so that mightn't even be registered in that statistic. But, you want him in the 18-yard box in shooting positions, and he's only been able to do that 3 times so far in the Premier League. One of them was the important goal against West Ham, which was pretty much the winning goal, wasn't it? But, more is needed, and, like I say, a lot of it is down to Isak himself. But I think it is the lion's share of it being a structural issue, which Slot, what is he doing to change it? He's done pressed the nuclear button for dropping Mo Salah, and that inevitably comes with headlines and talking points and all that sort of stuff. But just not really seeing Liverpool offer much as an attacking threat, really, which, considering the players they've got in their squad, is a real major worry.
Oh, it's the hope that kills you, isn't it? Because you get a result against West Ham, who I've already alluded to, are not great. Although they did draw at Man United the other night, so that gave me a chuckle. But that I wasn't chuckling during the first half at Anfield, because that was pretty depressing stuff. And one of the things that's sort of really annoyed me about it is the real lack of urgency to move the football. I mean, where's the this will make you laugh. My son's got a bit of a stock phrase he uses now when he's at the match. Whenever Liverpool apply a little bit of pressure for 30 seconds, he says to me, he's almost become a catchphrase. He says to me, "Is that the mythical Gegenpress?"
Right.
As if to say that's some old hat tactic that's just disappeared overnight. And I think at the start of the second half they pressed harder and probably tried to turn the ball over a bit quicker. But I suppose that's not really the point I'm trying to make. The point I really want to make is the urgency in actually moving the ball itself. And it's boring, it's predictable, and worst of all, it's easy to defend against them. Yeah. Why is that happening?
I mean, I think it goes back to Slot's idea of controlling the game. It's always about, don't play the risky pass, recycle it, let's keep hold of it, let's wait for our opportunities and, strike when they do present themselves. But at the moment, they're not really showing up, are they? And it worked last season. How many games last season did you get to half time thinking Liverpool needs to improve here? They've been way off it, and it's just been an ordinary sort of middling, boring game. Certainly for the neutral. And then second half, they spark into life. 1 or 2 things happen, and they come away 2-0 winners, or whatever. That, I guess, was exactly it on Sunday, wasn't it? And that's what was encouraging. It was a bit of a return to normality. A step in the right direction after such a troubling period. But Wednesday night was just a team we didn't want to lose. Like I say, rather than a team we wanted to win. And that at Anfield is pretty close to unforgivable, really. They seem too slow and too ponderous in the build-up. They're not coming out with any intensity. They're getting outfought a lot. And just not creating the sorts of opportunities that you'd expect, are they? They don't look like they're going to go and win a game 3 or 4-0. And to be fair, they didn't a whole lot last season either, but you never really felt that they weren't going to win. Whereas they're going into things now, I think me and you spoke earlier on, didn't we? And I think we're both fully expecting a Leeds United victory on Saturday, which is sort of how it's become now for Liverpool, who was just a bit too easy to play against.
We'll come to our headline predictions a little bit later in the show, but that says to me that effectively, and I know we've kind of touched on this before, but Liverpool have basically been found out. So if they were conservative in their build-up play last season, and basically through having very good players on the pitch, ground out results eventually in the second half just by wearing teams down. They're not wearing any team down now. I mean, Sunderland as Nottingham Forest, it just looked like they could have defended all day there. There was no issue. There was no one worn out from defending, was there? You know what I mean? It's that concerns me most, and that also ties into the work rate within the side, which I just don't. I'm not saying it's individually that people aren't trying or anything like that, but are they trying hard enough for each other? That's what worries me. I'll give you an example of something I saw on Wednesday night. Now, Florian Wirtz has got some praise for. He's scored the goal, albeit it's gone down as an own goal. I think his shot may have been off target, but whatever. He created the chance himself with brilliant body shape and showed exactly what he's all about and why Liverpool wanted to sign in the first place. But less than 10 minutes to go in that game, I saw him doing in a defensive position down the left-hand side. I think was Kerkers on by then? I think he would have been on by then. So and I think someone took a throw in and he just let them drift past and he left Kerkers 2-on-1 and they got a cross in and this was late in the game and this is the way Liverpool are conceding goals because they leaving spaces in behind from just not tracking markers and stuff, and that's just annoyed me. Yeah, that's Richard's rant for today about Florian Wirtz, okay, right. who I really want to be successful at Liverpool, and I know how talented he is, but I feel like he's got a lot to learn about what is required to make it in the Premier League, and I don't know, you may or may not have spotted that yourself during the game.
I didn't, but I think, does it go back to this idea of the structure of the team being thrown to the wall, really, in search of a late winner? You know, Chiesa comes on, Ekitike comes on, and Chiesa's the one who makes the goal-saving clearance off Isidore, isn't he? You know, because he's the closest one to him. And that was a Liverpool corner. Everyone was up, and Chiesa's the one-man back, and it comes from that for me, you know, this idea that in the search of a late goal, all the attacking players get launched on, and the willingness to defend goes out the window. And you look at the late goals that Liverpool have conceded, and the games that have cost them. You know, Chelsea was similar, wasn't it? You know, Manchester United was definitely another one in there. Crystal Palace, you know, the Liverpool already thinking about attacking from that Crystal Palace throw-in, and then that's when Nketiah gets the space for the goal. So the Liverpool season would look a lot better if they just managed these closing stages, and had it not been for Chiesa, they would have lost again on Wednesday night, and we're talking about the same failings. So it's troubling, really, that these same patterns keep repeating themselves. And I still think that they're all right in the league position, because they're not going to win the league now. I think that ship sailed long ago, didn't it? You know, 11 points behind Arsenal now. But I think once you sort of get your head around that, you know, Liverpool have only won the league twice in 35 years. So, you know, if they're not going to win it this season, so be it. It's no great disaster, but as long as they're around on the coattails of the Champions League places, I think they're okay. But performances have definitely got to improve before those start drifting away from those top 4 or 5 places. And this is the worry, really. It's performances as much as results, because it doesn't look like it's going to change. It's not like Liverpool are creating chance after chance, and it's just an idea that if they start taking a couple of them, results will improve, because they're not creating anything, are they? Alexis McAllister probably gets Liverpool's best chance on Wednesday night. A header inside the box comes off the post. That can't be part of your great game plan, can it?
It's almost a half chance, that
your smallest midfielder to get a header in the box. No, that is just not part of the plan. And I just want to see what the plan is, because at the moment, in the final third, I'm scratching my head because I don't really know what they're trying to do, other than Cody Gakpo chopping back onto his right foot, swinging across into the back post and seeing if it comes off.
Well, let's touch on Gakpo, actually, because he's on my list here. And I had sort of suggested previously that I would quite like to see Hugo Ekitike play where Gakpo is at the moment, purely on the basis, obviously, that if you're going to play Alexander Isak, you can't have the two of them in the position in that shape. I don't think they've got any desire to play 2 strikers up front in a 4-4-2, although I wouldn't put anything past the current situation. But is Gakpo sort of, the poster boy of this current slot issue, in that it's all too slow, it's all too predictable, and it's easy to defend against. I mean, we had Luis Diaz there last season vying for that position, and he would more often than not get the nod. He was bringing pace and energy and could take players on. He's got players on the bench that can do that. He's got Rio Ngamoa, who's quite capable. Well, that's what his game is taking players on. He's got Federico Chiesa, who's had some good cameos. Obviously, point-saving, clearance on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Another player who's prepared to take people on and do something a little bit different. But it's still Gakpo who's getting the nod. We've talked about extensively about Mo Salah coming out the side, and he has come out. Could Gakpo be on borrowed time?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like singling out players when I think it's a collective thing, but there's no doubt that Gakpo isn't anywhere near as influential as he was.
Something's got to change, though.
Yeah. We look at this time last year. I seem to remember him going on a really good run at Anfield, scoring goals against the likes of Leicester on Boxing Day. Man United was in around that time as well, and he was establishing himself as a really important player for Slot. And this time around, these things having a poor season, really, and how much of that is down to the lack of competition for his place. He knows, and a bit like Canate in this sense, that, win, lose or draw, you're probably going to be playing the following week because there's no one really to take your place. Rio and Ngamoa, it'd be a real shock if Slot put him in, wouldn't it? Anyone else? Ekitike's been hugely reluctant to give him a run out on that left side. Chiesa probably doesn't really fit it either. So, Gakpo can just carry on with these sort of ordinary performances and knows that he's going to be in a position to play next week. And that's why I think it's been a bit harsh on Salah, because I don't think Salah's been any worse than Gakpo. It's magnified a bit more, isn't it, when it's Mo Salah because of the profile of the player.
I agree completely.
And I thought Jamie Carragher was spot on after the PSV game when he spoke about Salah not doing the business, but where are the guys digging him out of a hole when he's not? He can't be relied upon every single time. And I think by dropping him out the team, it's created a lot of noise and a lot of headlines and talking points when did it really need to be that way in terms of, the noise outside of the Liverpool bubble now is about a player who's on the wane. He's finished. He's heard talk of, the Saudi Pro League, all that sort of stuff, just because he hasn't started back-to-back games. And I get this idea that no one's untouchable, and Virgil van Dijk said something similar to us after the game on Wednesday. But I don't think he was massively out of sorts compared to pretty much everyone else in the team, and that includes Gakpo. So, I mean, we know he's going to AFCON, don't we, Salah? So maybe it was done with a view to start to getting a formation and a system in place for when he is unavailable. But Gakpo has not been any better than Salah to warrant, his continued selection. So let's see what happens tomorrow. But yeah, there are problems in that forward line generally, and something needs to change. A new approach, a new level of intensity, certainly.
To that point as well, some people may look at it and say, well, Ekitike really, his strength is playing down the middle. Yeah, he can do a bit on the left, but, it's not really his thing. Well, I don't think you'd do any worse than the output that's there at the moment, is there? And this sort of buys into the fact that he really doesn't really know what his best team is. I'm not really sure he even knows what his best formation is.
Yeah. I mean, there is an element to that. I could understand. I think when you've got the four midfielders in there, in Szoboszlai, Wirtz, McAllister and Gravenberch, there's, that they're all going to take care of the ball, don't you? No matter where they receive it, no matter what areas of the pitch, they're going to be comfortable and confident on the ball. But you may be sacrificing a little bit of attacking intent as a result of that. I think it's been a good week for Wirtz. I thought he was the best player on the pitch at West Ham, and he was good the other night, and obviously comes up with this big moment, doesn't need to drag Liverpool out of it. It goes from a goal to an assist quite quickly, but it is a decisive contribution. So that was good to see from him. But generally, it was just, the goalkeeper, Robin Roofs, he was probably expecting to be a lot more overworked than he was. I don't really remember him doing a whole lot, do you?
Which is a common theme. There's a lot of goalkeepers coming to Anfield and getting a bit cold. To be honest with you, which is worrying me.
I mean, Regis Labrie, the Sunderland manager, he said that he was surprised by how much time and space, his players were afforded at Liverpool. Maybe because Liverpool weren't pressing that high up the pitch because they didn't want to get caught out behind. You know, like I say, it was just this idea of making sure that they were solid first, didn't want to get beat. And there is something to be said of that, particularly when you're on the run that you're in and you've conceded the first goal so often. But they conceded the first goal again, you know, doesn't matter when it was. It's I think that's 11 times now in this 14-game run that they've conceded the first goal. And they've only won one of them, which was against Frankfurt, you know, well over a month ago now. So it's I'd just like to see Liverpool start with a bit more intensity, a bit more with the bit between the teeth, because that only seems to come when they go behind and the crowd get on the back a little bit. And, you know, I think you need more than that, don't you? You can't just be jolted into some sort of response every single week.
Well, it's certainly not Premier League winning form. And I guess a draw against Sunderland, a Sunderland team that's been doing really well in isolation, you know, the 6th in the table, in isolation, isn't a disastrous result. But obviously, in the run that they're in the, you know, the bigger picture, it's not a good result at all. If we start to look forward a little bit, then he solved his right back situation by bringing in a player who's actually played a bit of his career at right back in Joe Gomez. Looked, you know, pretty solid there until he had to be withdrawn. But you've been at Slot's press conference today, and we've got some better news on Conor Bradley, haven't we?
Yeah, he said Bradley should train today, and if all being well, he's going to be in the squad tomorrow. So that's a big bonus for Liverpool, just to have a specialist right back in the team. And fair play to Joe Gomez. I thought he was really good on Sunday. You know, helped Garnett out no end, because Garnett has been struggling, let's face it. But having someone whose, you know, defensive instincts are there first and foremost in Joe Gomez next to him, that was a big help. So yeah, I expect Conor Bradley to play tomorrow, because Joe Gomez simply can't play 3 games in a week. You know, that was his first. You know, the game at West Ham was his first Premier League start since he got the injury at West Ham in December of last year. So it's nearly 12 months to the day since then. And then, you know, back-to-back performances again for the first time in a year. So, you know, he won't play 3 games in a week, will he? Surely. So Conor Bradley will come back in. And I think it's an important period for him now, because he's got to show that he's got the durability to play every week. You know, because I think, given the Frimpong has had a couple of hamstring injuries, and I think he's only started one in the Premier League against Bournemouth back in mid-August, you know, it's there for Bradley to go and cement yourself as the first choice right back. And he just can't seem to do that because of these recurring injuries that he gets. And that was what Slot said recently. He said the only thing holding Conor Bradley back from becoming a top player is staying fit. So hopefully he's back in the team tomorrow, and it's the first of many starts at right back, because he's a great player. You know, he's got big potential, but we need to start seeing a prolonged period of fitness now, I think.
Yeah, he definitely needs a run of games and a run of not getting booked
to
try and cement that position and make it his own. And obviously, with Mo Salah going to AFCON pretty soon, when Jeremy Frimpong returns, he could still be deployed in a more advanced role if he's, you know, recovers from injury in time. If not, we might see someone else there. But that obviously paves the way for Bradley to, as I say, cement that position and make it his own. And I would certainly hope to see him involved from the off against Leeds tomorrow. When we look at Leeds in the table, obviously a pretty unexpected but nonetheless impressive victory against Chelsea at home on Wednesday. That was their first win in 5 on the back of 4 consecutive defeats. So as much pressure as Slot is under for different reasons at the moment, it's exactly the same at Leeds for Daniel Farke. But they're going to be at home. They're going, we know what the Leeds crowd is like. It's pretty lively. They're going to be banged up for it for a 5:30 kickoff. It's going to, and Liverpool have got a big game to deal with there. If I look at who Leeds have beaten so far this season, they've only won 4 games, but they've beaten Everton, Chelsea the other night, as we know, West Ham and Wolves. So West Ham and Wolves, 2 other sort of relegation candidates there. And the only pasting they've had is off Arsenal, which was right at the start of the season. I think they got hit for 5. But other than that, if you look at the results, most of them that they've lost is only by the odd goal. So although they haven't necessarily been getting results, they've been competing in all the games that they're in. And
yeah. I mean, it's been a good week for them, hasn't it? Obviously, that was a huge result on Wednesday, and they took Man City to the wire, didn't they, last weekend? And wasn't for Phil Foden's late intervention, they might have even earned the point from that one. So it's going to be really tough for Liverpool tomorrow. All the hallmarks of the things that Liverpool don't like at the moment. It's going to be hostile, it's going to be volatile, physical, direct, and under the lights at Elland Road with those home fans cheering them on. I think, we wouldn't even describe it as a banana skin for Liverpool now. It's a real test of their capabilities, and at the moment they haven't really shown enough to suggest that this is the type of examination that they can come through. So we sort of do our predictions every week on this pod, don't we? And at times you're fearful of sounding like Mark Lawrence predicting Liverpool win every week. And I think when he did his BBC predictions, they were like 3 years invincible, weren't they? Because he just never picked them to lose. And I think I've been guilty of doing similar, but this is one of the few times when I think this could be a really difficult one for Liverpool, and sounds strange to say, but that is where Liverpool are at the moment. So they've got to show the character to handle it. And maybe, is this going to be one where all the things I've just spoken about there, the sort of controlled, ponderous play, might that actually help them in this one, just to quieten down the crowd and just play their way into it? Possibly, if they can avoid going down to an early goal, which they haven't been able to do too often lately.
It's more acceptable away from home, isn't it? Especially in that sort of hostile atmosphere. At home to Sunderland, regardless of how well Sunderland have done recently, you're expecting onslaught, don't you? If you were playing Manchester City at home, you'd expect Liverpool to be going for it, gun ho, and giving the crowd something to shout about, rather than what was, let's be honest, a boring football match. Yeah,
that's exactly it. You look at I don't want to compare and contrast, but you look at you think of like the hallmarks of a Jurgen Klopp team, and that was flying off the traps, wasn't it? And the intensity of just blowing teams away, you couldn't handle the press and all that sort of stuff. And at the moment, Liverpool aren't doing anything like that. We know it's a different style of football, and it did take them to the title last season, but there has to be a little bit of a middle ground when teams have, like you say, have figured Liverpool out to an extent. You've got more chance of being figured out when you just carry on doing the same thing. And there's no doubt that teams are looking at how Liverpool play. They are letting the likes of Garnett get on the ball more than anyone else, and they are looking to go long and direct and pick up the second balls and unsettle Liverpool at set pieces and all this sort of stuff. And so far, it's largely working, isn't it, for these opposition teams? So yeah, I'm really concerned about this trip tomorrow, which it would not have been when the fixture list was dispatched in June.
Dominic Calvert-Lewin will likely start up front for Leeds tomorrow, ex-Everton, as we know. He's been criticised quite a lot since moving to Elland Road. He's not been an automatic favourite with them, but he's got 3 Premier League goals, which is 2 more than Alexander Isak, who cost £125 million, and is, I think, the same as Hugo Ekitike, who we've bigged up on this show quite a bit, but the reality is he hasn't scored a Premier League goal since September.
Yeah. I mean, I'm slightly worried about Ekitike at the moment because, like you say there, there's this idea that, he's been one of the few summer signings who've shown why they were brought to the club, but that's faded quite a lot, hasn't it? His last goal was against Frankfurt on October the 22nd, so he's gone a fair few weeks now without a goal, admittedly with an international break in there as well. But yeah, it's a tough one, and like I say, it just goes back to this idea of what are Liverpool trying to do in this final third. Still none the wiser, really, because they're not creating too many chances. And yeah, you mentioned Calvert-Lewin there. He scored on Wednesday, didn't he? He won't score an easier one this season, I'm sure, if anyone's seen that one. But yeah, he will be the sort of threat that Liverpool have shown that they struggle with. Really good in the air. He will look to peel onto Konate and make life difficult for him. And the Leeds players will look to feed off that and take it from there. So, yeah, it's, like I say, it's going to be a really tough one. And the away, or rather the home fans, I remember being at Elland Road for a game in 2022, I think, and they made it known that they didn't like Liverpool. And when the atmosphere is like that, Liverpool have shown they don't really like it lately.
Yeah, they have looked like they haven't fancied it on a numerous occasions when they're faced with any sort of adversity, which is a bit of a worry. I'll take a short answer on this, but do you think Liverpool need to score more than once if they're going to win this game? Or would a 1-0 snatch be...
Yeah, I mean, they could keep it tight, but, have they shown that they can do that defensively? At West Ham, it was relatively straightforward, wasn't it? They didn't create a whole lot, but yeah, I mean, I would snatch your hand off for a 1-0 at the moment.
Well, history is actually on Liverpool's side a little bit in this, because the last time Leeds beat Liverpool in the Premier League was actually 25 years ago at Elland Road. Just to clarify, last time that Leeds beat Liverpool at Elland Road was in 2000. I don't know if you remember the game or not.
Mark Federico scores 4.
It is indeed. It is indeed. I was at the game behind the goal. It was actually the best Liverpool defeat I've ever watched.
Yeah, that was a great game, wasn't it? And, Viduka terrorised Liverpool, didn't he, that day? But, yeah, I don't want anything as entertaining as that tomorrow night. Not least because filing the match report will be quite difficult.
I was just going to say, that is a reporter's nightmare. Especially that you don't want a late swing, do you, to change your narrative.
But I think we've already had that with Rio and Gamoa scoring in the 100th minute at Newcastle on August Bank Holiday. That was a difficult rewrite when you're up against the deadline on a night game. But yeah, it's I mean, like you say there about Leeds last time they beat Liverpool was 25 years ago. That was a really good Leeds team who were neck and neck with Liverpool at the time, weren't they? Just sort of behind the likes of Manchester United and Arsenal.
Yeah.
This isn't the same, is it? Liverpool went there 2-3 years ago and won 5 or 6. And that was a time when they'd just come out of a really difficult period and were starting to put together a little bit of a run at the back end of that season, which ultimately saw them miss out on the Champions League. But, I think it was maybe they won 8 of the last 10, something like that. But, something similar in terms of performance that maybe hints that the worst of it is over. I think that'd be, obviously clearly a positive ahead of a big remaining, run in December. But it's going to be tough. Like I say, it really is. And it'd be a big tick in the box, wouldn't it, if Liverpool could show they could stand up to the sort of physical direct threat that's going to be coming their way.
Yeah, it does worry me. After they got smashed by PSV, after they got beat by Nottingham Forest, we did call for a bit more defensive solidity. We'll take the positives. They've only conceded 1 goal in 2. So if we can keep a clean sheet on Saturday, then defensively things will look a little bit better, and then we can sort of work out the other end of the pitch on another day.
It's about the balancing act, isn't it? And it always is. It always has been. But I think maybe they just went too much that way on Wednesday night, and particularly at home, being so safety first was unusual, and as a result, it was a very ordinary game that Liverpool have dropped 2 points in.
Well, without further ado, then let's pick our teams for tomorrow. Then, Gorst. I think we can probably both agree that Alisson will be in goal, providing he hasn't picked up any more knocks.
Yeah, illness
as he invariably does. So, what about your back 4 then, or back 5, back 3? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think Bradley will return. Konate and Van Dijk will be the centre backs. I mean, at left back, I'm neither here nor there now with Kerkez or Robertson. I was banging the drum for Robertson a couple of weeks ago. I think Kerkez has been a bit better. So I think after Robertson played on Wednesday, I'm going to go with Kerkez.
Interesting. So you changed 2 of your back 4 then again. So there is a lack of
you're right. I'll tell you what, I'll go with Robertson. Robertson comes back in for Kerkez, as he's just got a little bit more experience of handling a hostile environment that Elland Road will be, rather than Kerkez, who perhaps could get caught in the storm there.
I've influenced the mind of Paul Gorst on the Blood Red podcast viewers. That is quite an achievement. But I'll meet you halfway on it, because I've left Robertson in at left back for that very reason, just to try and get a bit of much needed stability in the back four. I do think Kerkez has been better in recent weeks. I have been a bit critical of him on this show. He was probably a little bit unlucky to be taken out, actually, after playing a few games. And also, I've also been critical of him not receiving the ball enough down that flank to put crosses in, which was what we signed for in the first place. So a little bit unlucky, but in the interest of instability, I've got Robertson in there. Bradley straight in at right back, which I think is a no-brainer if he's fit. I would dearly like to play Gomez instead of Canate at centre-back, but I think your point is valid. It does seem unlikely that he's going to play 3 times in a week. And for that basis, Canate lives to fight another day again. So I've got Bradley, Canate, Van Dijk and Robertson. What about your midfield?
I don't see any reason to change the midfield 3, really. Szoboszlai, again, he was obviously stationed a little bit further wide, wasn't he, against Sunderland, but keep him in the team with McAllister and Gravenberch, and it's in the forward areas. I think Liverpool need maybe 1 or 2 tweaks. So midfield is as you were. Okay,
I have made a change in here, which I'm not totally convinced by, but I've done it anyway. So I've taken McAllister out, and I've got Gravenberch and Szoboszlai in there. Szoboszlai a little bit deeper. Retaining Wirtz at the front of those 3 as your sort of your number 10, so to speak. And I'll tell you my front 3 then, and then you can.
Go on.
We'll see how they're different off the back of that. So because Szoboszlai's moved back into that midfield berth, I've brought Salah back in, retained Isak down the middle, and I brought Ekitike in on the left. I want to see a bit more excitement there, if I'm honest with you, and I'm hopeful that he can provide it. So you've got Salah, Wirtz, Isak and Ekitike all on the pitch there, which on paper is pretty formidable. How it actually works in practice, we'll have to wait and see.
It's all guns blazing on paper, I like the sound of it. I'm just not sure. I think you can see the little bit of physicality if you've only got the 2 midfielders in there. You've taken out those McAllister. I mean, not exactly, the archetypal number 10, but number 6, but he will get stuck in, won't he? So I'm going to go with Wirtz off the left, and I've just made the case there for Salah's dropping, not perhaps being a little bit unfair, but I'd like to see Chiesa get a little bit of a run in there because he's all effort. His work rate's infectious. He gives us all, and at the moment it's probably it sounds a bit basic, but Liverpool could do a lot worse than just someone who's willing to run around and just give 100%. And not that Salah isn't or wasn't doing that, but I just think if Slot is determined to look for a little bit of a short-term solution that sees them try and navigate this period coming up without Salah, then they could do worse than having Chiesa in there. So I'll go with Chiesa on the right. Not convinced Isak will start, given that he is played 2 in a row there, hasn't he? And he's not 100% fit. I'd like to start him again, but I'm going to go with Ekitike through the middle, Wirtz off the left, and Chiesa wide right. Okay,
so you took Gakpo out as well.
Yeah.
So we've got a bit of common ground.
Having Salah and Isak on the bench is not a bad combo to call upon for half an hour, is it? If you need something. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but just think like Chiesa, we could do worse than just have him get amongst it, really, and just see what he can do and see what he can create, because he hasn't played a whole lot of football, but he's got an assist against United, he got a goal against Palace and a goal against Bournemouth, and of course the point-saving intervention on Wednesday night.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely bringing a lot of positive energy, Chiesa, and obviously the crowd love him. I think he's popular with the players. It's almost as if he should have played on Wednesday night with that with that assessment.
Yeah,
but
maybe, but it's. I just think. I mean, Slot clearly is not 100% sold on him, but at the moment when you're searching for something, why not?
If Chiesa does come in for Salah, you'll certainly have plenty to write about.
Mm-hmm.
Next, when I say come in for Salah, obviously Salah hasn't started the last 2, but that is his position, and you're playing him where Salah would play. So he'd have been left out for 2 different players.
Yeah. Then. Well, I'm just torn on this idea of using Salah to his maximum before he goes to AFCON, or putting something in place now for when he's not there for 3 weeks to 5 weeks, however long it's going to be. So let's see what Chiesa can do if he does start.
Okay, you've picked your team. Now, we dropped a hint about this earlier in the show. Now it's time for the all-important Paul Gorst prediction.
I mean, I'd like to see Liverpool stand up to the test, but the evidence on the last few weeks tells me that they might not. So, do Leeds win this 1-0?
So, I, broke rank last week by predicting Liverpool would lose to West Ham, which I got wrong, of course, which like I normally do, which I was quite glad to get wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid I am with you. I think this is going to be really difficult for Liverpool. If I was seeing more from a spirit and an ability to deal with adversity, I'd be happy to say we can scrap out a 1-0 win, and I still do think that's possible. However, I'm worried that Leeds may have got a bit of momentum from the weekend. Liverpool's could stagnate. It could go either way. It is really quite tough to call, which is a sign of where we are when you consider that Leeds are 17th.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I actually think Leeds might win this 2-1. I'm just worried with all the ingredients of that Saturday night fixture that we're not going to be able to deal with it, and that is where we are at the moment. Indeed. So you'll be at Elland Road?
Yes, me and Ian Doyle
tomorrow,
providing our usual heady mix of matchday content. Yeah, so
does Ian drive you up there? How's it work?
He tends to do the drive there, and I'll drive us back.
What's his music taste like in the car? Does he have the radio on?
So we have an unwritten rule that when Liverpool win, we put on History.
Oh yeah,
that's our sort of post game.
So you haven't listened to that for a while?
Yeah. Just forgotten what number it is, the station number. I put on the way there tomorrow. I don't know really. See what Sometimes listen to Radio 6. I think Dory likes Keris Matthews on Radio 6.
Oh, yeah.
But they're very much early Sunday morning games, those. Maybe in London or somewhere. So this is only across the Pennines, isn't it? So
these are the type of middle-aged radio stations I can get on board with. Yeah, it's almost like you've seen my presets in the car. Well, enjoy yourself tomorrow. Hopefully our predictions are completely wrong.
Yes. Yeah.
Liverpool can come away with 3 points, which incredibly could put them back in the Champions League qualification places, which just shows you that for all Liverpool's troubles this season, other teams are struggling as well. And there is hope. There's light at the end of the tunnel if they can get a good result. So all is not lost for Arne Slot.
No, I mean, like I say, it's the league-wise that they're okay at the moment, and you think the top four should be the aim, but they can't carry on in this, putting in these level of performances and expect those positions to be okay as they go. So yeah, it's a big few weeks. It really is. Other side of Christmas, see where they're up to. They've got Arsenal, haven't they, in January, and away. That's going to be tough. So need a good few weeks now, Liverpool. Good end to 2025.
That would be nice. Paul Gorst, thanks for joining me today. You've been watching the Blood Red Podcast. I'm Richard Garnett. Thank you for joining us today. Kick-off's 5:30 on Saturdays. You have a bit of time to get your Christmas shopping done beforehand. Have a good weekend.
This is the Blood Red Podcast from the Liverpool Echo, giving you the inside track on all the big talking points from Anfield.